In the suffocating darkness, "Please," echoed. A woman begged to be let out, her voice laced with desperation. She cradled a lifeless companion, her gaze fixed on the man standing before them. She tearfully questioned why he was subjecting them to this torment. The man remained silent, a dark aura swirling around him as he stood with his back partially turned. Through her tears, the green-haired woman explained that because of him, her friend had taken her own life. She looked up, her voice cracking with fury, and asked if he was satisfied now that they had suffered so much. He turned his head slightly, his tone cold and dismissive. He was sure they knew exactly why they were there. The reason they were imprisoned, he explained as he forcefully grabbed her chin, was because they had brought this upon themselves. She frantically denied it, insisting they had done nothing wrong. He had heard enough. Turning his back on her cries, he walked away, declaring that it was all over. This was his 6th regression. Once again, he had failed to stop the end of the world. Ujidi recalled his past self, a man who believed listening to that woman would change nothing. He had faced down the fiery breath of dragons, undeterred and without regret, his expression firm. He thought he could handle it all. Wielding his formless sword, Jidi learned a harsh lesson through 6 hellish lifetimes. Failure and experience were everything. He moved like a phantom, his blade a blur of blue energy as he cut through the monstrous hordes. One by one, the great beasts fell before him, his resolve unbroken. He carved a path through the red dragon, the green, and the blue, his face a mask of cold determination. He landed on a pile of rubble in the heart of the burning city, catching his breath for a moment. But it was futile. No matter how many he killed, there was no end to them. A notification chimed, announcing that Earth had succumbed to the apocalypse. He had failed, but even so, he had a way back. The authority of the grand clock rewound the world's time, his eyes reflecting the golden light before closing as he was sent back once more. As the world reset, he considered that perhaps his failures weren't entirely meaningless. A final notification confirmed it. The time of the world would begin again. On a peaceful city street, a crowd gathered, murmuring and pointing towards the sky. A swirling purple gate had appeared, looking like something from a movie. Some felt a sense of dread, suggesting they leave immediately. One man, however, laughed it off. He told his friend to hold his beer, because a true man always gets a picture with a thumbs up next to a potential world-ending anomaly. His bravado was short-lived. As monsters poured from the gate, the phone clattered to the ground, its screen shattered. It was the 21st century, and humanity's nightmare had just begun. Gates opened across the globe, unleashing hordes of monsters. It seemed humanity's flame was about to be extinguished. But from the ashes, a new power arose. Humanity entered a new era, the new Genesis. Young hunters with great potential were gathered on a floating, artificial land called Heitling, where the World Academy City, Lair, was founded. And it was to Lair that the regressor, now on his 7th attempt, was headed. In the city, a thug named Joe Hoshik held a woman hostage, screaming at the police to back off. The officers ordered him to surrender, but he refused, vowing to take the woman down with him, since he was already a dead man. Suddenly, a calm voice spoke from directly behind him. Ujidi asked if he hadn't heard the order to surrender. Hoshik froze, stunned that he hadn't sensed his approach, wondering when the man had gotten there. In a panic, he shoved the hostage aside and lunged at Jidi, screaming for the pig cop to die. Jidi sidestepped the attack effortlessly. He clarified that he was not a pig cop, but a police officer, just before a single punch sent Hoshik flying. The criminal crashed to the ground, unconscious. One of the other officers nervously told Jidi to watch his strength. Jidi, now identified as an officer of the Lair Metropolitan Police, merely apologized, saying he had forgotten himself for a moment. Back at the station, a female colleague was recapping the morning's events, explaining how the human trafficker, Joe Hoshik, had taken a hostage after being cornered. She then looked down at the unconscious man on their floor and asked why he was there. Jidi nonchalantly replied that he picked him up on the way. Flustered, the officer reminded him to file a report before congratulating him on a job well done. She watched him walk away, feeling that something about him had changed. Other officers agreed, noting he seemed taller and more handsome. An older colleague worried that he'd be reprimanded for using excessive force again, but Jidi wasn't listening. He looked around the office, realizing he didn't recognize a single face. Since his regressions began, he had never bothered to show up for work, making this his first time meeting any of his colleagues. He took the unconscious criminal from them, telling them to get back to their duties. The reason he had abandoned his ordinary life was simple: the death of baby dragons. These hatchlings, known as a Scalifa, came to Earth to accumulate happy experiences. But many died, driven mad by war and malice, while others simply gave up, unable to fulfill their missions. Each time a hatchling died, the adult dragons would descend upon Earth in a rage, bringing about the apocalypse. Jidi had repeated this cycle so many times he could no longer grow any stronger. It was still not enough to save the world alone. That's why, in this 7th regression, he had a different plan. As he dragged Hashik away, his female colleague called out to him, asking if he had plans after work. She shyly invited him to a new restaurant, but he politely declined, stating he had somewhere else to be. When she asked where he was going, he answered simply as he walked out the door. Europe. A single leaf drifted on the wind, floating over the picturesque city of Florence, Italy. In a sun-drenched park, the green-haired woman from his failed timeline was laughing, placing a flower crown on a little girl's head. The child beamed with joy, and the woman played with the other children, her past trauma seemingly a world away. From a distance, Ujidi watched her, his expression unreadable. He approached her quietly. "Hello," he said. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of him, a faint blush gracing her cheeks. His face was grim. He told her that he needed her to come with him. In the sun-drenched park, Ujidi's simple hello hung in the air. The green-haired woman turned, her eyes widening slightly as a skill activated within her, allowing her to understand his foreign tongue. She asked why he had come looking for her, and he stated that he had business with her. He asked if she knew who he was, and she confirmed that she did. He then returned the question, and he replied with a simple yes. With a bright smile, she identified him as Ujidi, asking if she was correct. His expression darkened instantly. He demanded to know where she had heard that name. Giggling, she pointed at the name tag on his uniform. She then admitted she was just kidding and had no idea who he was. However, she could tell one thing. He was incredibly strong and completely out of place in such a peaceful setting. Jidi remained silent. She tilted her head, playfully asking if he was there to kill her. He said no. She then guessed it must be a kidnapping, and he conceded it was close enough. She feigned shock, asking if he was one of those rare humans with a thing for dragons, scaly perhaps. He curtly told her to stop fooling around. He stated his true purpose, to protect her in this dangerous world. He warned that if she didn't cooperate, he would have to use rougher methods. He explained that the Green Dragon clan's eyes could see providence, making them more perceptive than others. As she was one of them, he hoped she would make a wise choice. She considered his words, then asked if he would treat her kindly if she listened quietly. He agreed. With a resigned smile, she accepted, admitting she didn't have much of a choice. She did, however, have one condition. He had to promise to treat her like a guest, extending her pinky to seal the deal. He looked annoyed for a moment, but relented, locking his finger with hers and promising. The next morning, in a modern high-rise apartment, the woman peeked out from a bedroom door. Wondering if he was awake, she stepped into the living room and called out to him. She found him speaking with a shadowy, identical clone of himself. Jidi instructed the clone to go and do what it was told. The clone bowed, addressing him as my lord before departing. As it passed her, it gave a slight nod. She marveled that it looked exactly the same as the original. Jidi explained that the clone went to work in his place. She asked why he didn't go himself, and he replied that the clone was one of his abilities, so it was still technically him working. Besides, he needed to stay by her side. She then suggested they have breakfast. She reminded him that he'd skipped dinner the night before, but he insisted he was fine. She pouted, saying it felt weird for her to eat while the homeowner didn't. He questioned if she even needed to eat 3 meals a day, since dragons could survive without food. She explained that it wasn't about survival. Good food made one happy and energized. Declaring that this wouldn't do, she insisted he come grocery shopping with her, despite his protests. She was determined to show him the power of breakfast. They went to a nearby S-Mart. Their striking appearances drew whispers from other shoppers, who commented on how much they looked like celebrities. On their way back, he noted she'd bought quite a lot for one meal. She explained that the kitchen was bare, and she planned to cook regularly from now on. She was eager to get home and start, but he told her they would eat out after dropping the groceries off. There was a place they needed to stop first, a place she had to come to as well. She apologized, admitting she got carried away since it had been a while since she'd gone shopping. He told her there were things she would need to live there and that they had to hurry. Their first stop was a dingy office where a creepy man with a cybernetic eye leered at her, asking if she was Jidi's girlfriend. Jidi coldly warned him to shut up and do his job if he wanted to keep his remaining eye. The man grumbled and got to work. Afterward, they visited a proper government building to pick up several items, including a new hologram watch. She stared in wonder at her new resident registration card. Her name was now UBOM. She told him she'd never had an ID, a bank account, or a hologram watch before, making him wonder how she had survived on Earth for so long. She understood her surname came from him, but she asked about her given name, Bomb. He explained it was from the 4 seasons, since there were 4 dragon clans, and Bomb meant spring. She smiled, liking her new name. Spring, she mused, was the season of new life, a beautiful name indeed. As they walked, she confessed that he was still a little scary. Her dragon eyes were still warning her about him. Despite that, she didn't think he was a bad person. He asked how she could be so sure after just one day. She stated confidently that her intuition was better than anyone's, a perk of being from the Green Dragon clan. After a brief pause, she asked if it was okay for her to watch him a little longer. Her genuine smile was something GD had never seen in any of his previous regressions. She cheerfully invited him to dinner, offering to cook. He looked up at the cherry blossoms falling around them. The start isn't bad, he thought. Meanwhile, under the full moon in an African wasteland, a different scene unfolded. A red-haired woman stood over a defeated man, mocking his weakness. The man cursed her, sputtering that she wouldn't get away unscathed. She just laughed and stomped on his head, sarcastically apologizing for stepping too hard on his ugly face. She let out a sigh, marking her 199th consecutive victory. Lifting the mask from her face, she smiled predatorily and wondered who her next opponent would be. At his desk, Ujidi scrolled through news articles about the armed conflict in South Africa. A vigilante, known as the Night Hunter, rumored to be a teenage girl, was making waves. GD decided it was time to make his move. Just then, UBOM called out that dinner was ready. He told her he'd be right there. He sat down to a unique dish. 2 whole sardines were stuck upright in a bowl of what appeared to be purple rice, emitting a strange aura. BOM beamed, asking for his opinion. She explained that she'd seen a sardine dish in the UK and thought it would go well with rice, since Koreans love rice. GD stared at the meal. He changed the subject, announcing that he was going to get the red dragon tomorrow. Bomb's expression turned serious. She warned him that bringing Red back would be difficult, as she wouldn't come as easily as she had. GD suggested that if BOM came along to help convince her, it might not be so hard. BOM hesitated, explaining that meetings between different dragon houses could be awkward. He questioned her use of the word awkward. She clarified that all dragons want different things. While she enjoyed taking her time and building things, the red dragons were different. They loved war and violence, and for them, subjugation was a fate worse than death. He acknowledged her point, but insisted they had to bring the red dragon in soon, as someone was after her. At this rate, she would be killed. If BOM came with him, they could settle things peacefully. BOM found it interesting to see him ask for help. She had always thought he was the type to handle everything himself. But since it was a rare occasion, and she didn't want Red to die either, she agreed to help, but with one condition. He had to finish the meal she'd prepared for him. As she'd noticed he'd put his spoon down, GD was silent for a moment. She had him cornered, and he knew it. Meanwhile, in a war-torn African village, the Red Dragon, also known as the Night Hunter, stood over a pile of defeated soldiers. She commented on their weakness, disappointed that her 200th victory had been so anticlimactic. Wondering where to go next, she remembered hearing that Green was in Europe and decided to pay her a visit. The surviving soldiers watched her, terrified. One called her a battle-crazed monster, while another recognized they were no match for her and prayed for him to arrive soon. The Red Dragon appeared behind them in a flash, asking what they were whispering about. They cried out in alarm, but it was too late. As she swung her blade, a powerful force of mana slammed into her. She cursed, surprised by the immense power, but with a yell, she swung her sword and cleaved the mana in two. The soldiers stared in awe, calling her a monster. A figure in golden armor appeared, identifying her as the Night Hunter. One of the soldiers cried out his name, Javier. Javier Karma, ranked 8th among the African Union superhumans, ordered his men to fall back with the wounded. The Red Dragon was surprised by his sudden appearance and impressed by the power of his attack. With a grin, she realized she was facing the boss. Javier noted she was younger than he'd heard. She joked that he must have fallen for her, which was why she usually wore a mask. People would get distracted. He ignored her taunt, asking why she wouldn't surrender when she had clearly felt the difference in their power. She scoffed at the idea of retreating just because her weapon was broken. She would rather die fighting than surrender and live. With a roar, she launched herself at him, her fists glowing with red energy. She rained blows upon his armor, and spotting an opening, she went for the ultimate low blow, a dick punch. To her surprise, there was no reaction. Javier observed that she had likely never fought anyone stronger than herself before. He lamented her wasted talent, but declared he wouldn't play her games any longer. He struck her down with a powerful swing of his sword, unleashing the Sword of Ra. The Red Dragon braced herself, knowing she couldn't avoid the attack. The blast of light sent her flying, crashing into a ruined wall. Javier was impressed that she had managed to block it, noting that he would have to increase his output. He turned to find that she had vanished. She had run away. Behind a wall, BOM had appeared, much to Red's surprise. BOM explained that she'd heard Red was in trouble and came to save her. Red was skeptical, knowing BOM couldn't fight. BOM whispered that she had been told Red would die if she kept fighting. Red angrily told her to mind her own business, insisting she would fight to the end. BOM calmly replied that Red's death wouldn't just be her own. Their fun would end if she died. As she healed Red's wounds, she reminded her that she didn't want their fun to be ruined either. She wanted to stay on Earth and asked Red to work with her. Red was speechless for a moment. She asked if they should run, pointing out that Javier would catch them easily. Bomb smiled, saying she thought her guy would take care of that. When Red questioned who her guy was, BOM simply said that she hadn't come alone. Javier turned to see Ujidi standing there. He demanded to know who he was. GD looked at him with an impassive expression and simply stated that he was a chaperone. Elsewhere, in a lush green forest, a blonde girl sniffed the air. She thought it smelled like green, but it wasn't her. She turned to find GD standing before her. With a bright, innocent smile, she asked who he was, then added, "You're not a bad man, are you?" GD responded with a simple question. "A chaperone," he repeated calmly. Javier, the armored superhuman, was skeptical. He commented that the girl didn't seem to need much chaperoning. Behind the rubble, BOM pulled Red back, warning her of the danger. Javier was bewildered as GD suggested they just stop there. Javier scoffed, stating that the girl had crossed the line and couldn't be let go. GD pointed out that she hadn't killed anyone. Javier dismissed his words as games and insisted that she wouldn't be out there for much longer. GD simply asked why he couldn't just let it go. Angered, Javier refused to back down, declaring that the area was under the jurisdiction of the SN. As an investigator, he was to arrest them both. With a yell, Javier unleashed a torrent of golden energy, tearing up the ground around them. After the dust settled, he remarked that anyone associated with the monster girl should have been able to withstand such an attack. A voice from behind him called him frustrating. GD stood there, admonishing the 8th-ranked superhuman for being so uptight. Javier spun around in shock, wondering how he had gotten behind him. He quickly unleashed his sword of RA again, but his attack was effortlessly stopped. A single footstep from GD seemed to nullify the attack. He told Javier to listen quietly, informing him that this was the unluckiest day of his life. He explained that while trying to apprehend the girl, he had unfortunately encountered an unforeseen monster. Unable to respond to the monster's attacks, he would lose both his arms and eyes, as well as both of his targets. As GD's blade of dark energy neared his face, Javier cried out for him to wait. A flash of light and a scream, and it was over. Though the SN had healers who could easily restore lost limbs and eyes, the fear imprinted on Javier's soul would never fade. GD had used fear effectively, and he wasn't finished. The so-called Night Hunter was not immune to it either. Red stared at GD, asking BOM what that monster was. BOM corrected her, saying he was a human. Red scoffed, claiming that if he was a human, then she was just a lizard. GD addressed her directly, stating that she would now live in his house, under his protection. He promised her freedom and support, but his tone darkened as he warned her what would happen if she left his protection. BOM, seeing Red's shocked expression, asked GD to let her calm Red down and explain things later. She then proceeded to put Red in a full Nelson, much to Red's surprise and confusion. GD was silent for a moment. He informed Red that her new name was Urium, and that he would explain everything later. BOM cheerfully commented on how much Red had grown, while Red angrily told her she wasn't in the mood to mess around. GD then contacted his clone, reporting that the situation was handled. Simultaneously, in the Amazon rainforest, the clone received the report. He replied with a good work and said he would return after finishing up. Back in his apartment, GD mused that Red was a total brute, and convincing her would have been difficult for the clone alone. It was a good thing he had sent BOM with him. In the rainforest, the blonde girl asked who he had just spoken to. The clone dismissed it as nothing, but she found it weird, since his smartwatch was right there. She playfully asked if he enjoyed talking to himself. This was the gold dragon. Like all of her kind, she loved attention and had lived a life of fame. However, this same desire for the spotlight had also led her to cause the most destruction. The love of many is glamorous, but has its downsides, which was likely why she was hiding in the middle of nowhere. She was currently marveling at the hologram watch he had given her, exclaiming that she'd never seen anything so cool. The clone asked why she was out here. He told her she should be among humans if she was there for entertainment, as the jungle only had beasts and bugs. She was stunned that he knew her purpose. He explained that the green dragon had told him. The gold dragon excitedly realized he knew green, as she had smelled her scent on him. He confirmed her identity as the gold dragon and asked if she was now afraid of humans. She admitted that while she wasn't terrified, she had had some scary experiences before. Some humans had given her weird looks, and others had followed her, which was unsettling. After a moment of silence, the clone changed the subject, asking if she liked bread. Before she could finish explaining that dragons don't need to eat, he snapped his fingers. A subdimensional portal, the void's shallowest, opened up, and a bag of bread appeared in his hand. She stared in amazement. It was really bread. She took the bag, inhaling the delicious scent and asking if it was really for her. When he confirmed it was, she squealed with delight at the sight of donuts and blueberry egg tarts. He told her not to stay there and to come with him. He promised her that her friends would be there, she would be safe, and she could enjoy herself like the other dragons. She hesitated, saying her mom told her not to follow strangers. The clone simply replied that he would buy her macarons too. Her eyes lit up at the offer. On a bright morning in the city, overlooking the tall apartment buildings, Urium stood on the balcony, a lollipop stick hanging from her lips. She recalled her encounters with Javier and GD, a scowl forming on her face as she muttered a curse. From inside, BOM watched her with concern, calling out her name softly. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was GD's clone, returning with a gold dragon in tow. The blonde girl announced their arrival, quickly adding that she wasn't there for more bread, though she did admit the sausage roll was heavenly. She took a bite of macaron, her eyes widening in delight. She declared it a taste of heaven. BOM welcomed them back. Gold excitedly greeted her, and the two embraced, happy to see each other after so long. Gold asked how long BOM had been living with this guy, and Bomb explained it was just for a few days. She then offered to introduce her to Red. GD's clone reported his return, and GD dismissed him, telling him he would be called again soon. Red peeked out from her room, her expression sour. Gold spotted her and called out excitedly. She rushed over, asking how she'd been, then immediately started nagging her about the smell of smoke, chiding her for her unhealthy habits. To shut her up, Red shoved a piece of bread in her mouth, threatening to rip her beak out if she didn't stop talking. Gold just pouted, calling her mean. Later, the three dragons sat on the couch across from GD. He asked about their ages. BOM stated she was 20, while Gold chirped that she was 10. After a moment of hesitation, Red mumbled that she was 16. Gold explained that dragons grow faster than humans, so they didn't need to be treated like kids. She then asked about Red's name, Urium, wondering if it was fake. BOM clarified that it was the name GD had given her, and that her own name was BOM. Gold was surprised they already had names, as they hadn't even had their coming-of-age ceremonies yet. She then declared that her name must be Gul. GD confirmed it, telling her she would be Ugul from now on. He then pointed to the blue pendant around her neck, saying that that thing would be Jul. Gul was shocked that he knew it was Blue's egg. He explained that it was a polymorph and would be born soon, so she should be careful with it. Gul marveled at how much he knew for a human, but he simply told her she didn't need to know. He then laid down the one rule they had to follow. They were free to enjoy their entertainment, but they were not to leave the fence or hide from him. Their activities would be under his control and supervision. Red scoffed, asking if he was some kind of communist. The other two remained silent, unsure how to react. Red eventually conceded, clarifying that they could have fun nearby. BOM suggested they go out to get identities and supplies. Gold was thrilled at the idea, while Red grumbled about not having any money, though she mused that mugging people could be fun. GD handed BOM a black card, telling them not to worry about money and to have fun. BOM thanked him and asked what their spending limit was. He replied that they could spend as much as they wanted. The girls went on a wild shopping spree. Transaction notifications flooded GD's watch until the credit limit was reached. Back at the apartment, surrounded by shopping bags, Gold and Red excitedly tried on their new things. BOM returned the card to GD, apologizing for spending too much and explaining that she couldn't buy him anything because they'd hit the limit. He assured her it was fine. Gold called for his attention, showing off her new outfits and a hologram watch identical to Bomb's. He told her she looked good, and she beamed with happiness. Red, however, was less enthusiastic. She showed him a new wrist guard and a sword she had bought, explaining that her old one had been destroyed. He told her she'd picked a decent one, and she was relieved she hadn't bought garbage. Gold then tried to get her to try on some other clothes, but Red refused. BOM explained to GD that Urium was just bad at expressing her gratitude. GD then noticed that Bomb hadn't bought anything for herself. She pointed to a small potted plant on the table. She explained that it felt nice to tend to plants. She said that it would flower and be a memorable, everlasting presence. She then asked him a question. Since their entertainment wasn't just about eating and drinking, she wondered if there was a way to get the full experience while still under his supervision. He confirmed that there was. He then presented them with entrance applications for Lair Academy City, asking if they wanted to go to school. The three dragons stared at him in shock, the word school echoing in their minds. Back at the apartment, the three dragons announced their return. Urium stretched, complaining about the lengthy interview, while Boom noticed their guardian was missing. Gul suddenly had a terrible thought. What if her sisters passed, but she failed? The horror of being the only one left behind washed over her. Urium, annoyed by the negativity, suggested someone stuff her face with bread to quiet her down. Just then, GD appeared, congratulating them. Gul, however, was too busy moping about her supposed failure. She launched herself at him, wailing that the interviewers would surely fail her. GD calmly reassured her that she wouldn't fail and then revealed a shopping bag he'd been carrying. Gul's tears stopped as a delicious smell caught her attention. She excitedly guessed it was bread or macarons. GD hinted it was something she would like even more. Her mind flashed back to a television appearance on a dinner talk show. As the world-famous pop star, Baby Yahello, she had been excited to be on a show known for its food. The host promised that their chefs would cook her favorite dish on the spot. He jokingly mentioned a rumor that she survived on nothing but morning dew, which she laughed off, insisting she was still human. When asked what she liked most, the memory faded, replaced by the sight of 2 large boxes of freshly fried chicken. Gul stared, captivated by the amazing smell. Urium pointed out that it couldn't be her favorite if she'd never tried it, but Gul simply declared it would be her favorite from now on. Jidi watched them, thinking it was just fried chicken, though he had to admit it smelled good. BOM asked if he would join them for dinner. He initially declined, but she insisted. As the girls began to eat, Jidi stepped out onto the balcony, answering a call. It was the Lair admissions office, calling about a slight issue with the interview. The caller asked if he had heard from BOM. He hadn't. The man on the line explained that BOM had received a perfect score, so impressing the interviewers that they offered her the honor of leading the entrance ceremony. The problem, he continued, was that she had declined the offer. The officer asked if Jidi could convince her otherwise, but Jidi refused. If that was Bomb's wish, then it was his as well. He ended the call. Urium joined him on the balcony, asking if the call was about green. Jidi corrected her, telling her to use the name BOM. Urium scoffed, calling the name cringy and asking if he seriously intended to play house. After a moment of silence, she cut to the chase, asking why he was sending them to Lair. He replied that it was to give them what they wanted. For Urium, that meant a good fight. Jidi acknowledged that Lair had the best young fighters in the world, but they were still just kids. Urium pointed out that she was a kid too. She stubbed out her cigarette on the railing. She wanted a real fight with him. She knew he was strong, but she needed to know how strong. If she was going to follow him, he had to show her what he was truly capable of. Jidi was silent for a moment. He then turned away, telling her to go inside and eat. Enraged by his dismissal, she cursed and flipped him off. Inside, Gul offered her a piece of chicken. Urium angrily refused, but the chicken found its way into her mouth anyway. Her eyes widened in surprise. It was, she had to admit, amazing. Lair was an educational institution unlike any other, a school on the island of Heitling dedicated to training superhumans. Its cadets were the children of CEOs, royalty, and geniuses, a fact that drew constant criticism of its elitist hierarchy. On their first day, Gul and BOM walked the pristine campus in their new uniforms. Gul was in awe, speculating that Jidi must be the secret son of a CEO. She said he had that "my dad could buy your bloodline" vibe. BOM had to agree he looked the part. Gul celebrated that they had all gotten in, relieved that her earlier fears were unfounded. She then realized two people were missing. BOM explained that Urium was at the Blue Dragon School for a practical exam, with Jidi as her chaperone. The academy required adult supervisors to accompany the more volatile students to keep them in line. Gul agreed Urium would be a menace without supervision and asked about the extra test. BOM told her the combat-focused course Urium applied for required a duel for entry. Gul immediately wanted to go watch, but BOM said they couldn't. It would be weird for them all to go together, especially since they were already drawing stares from the other students. At the Blue Dragon School's Sangtian Pavilion, intense duels were underway. Cadets battled in multiple rings, their chaperones shouting advice from the stands. A calm voice cut through the noise, asking the chaperones to settle down. A man with long, silver hair approached Jidi. He introduced himself as Yuan, the head professor of the Blue Dragon School. The other chaperones greeted him with nervous respect, whispering about the famous war hero. Jidi remained impassive. An announcer called for the next match. Urium picked up a wooden sword and stepped into the ring, facing a blonde girl with cold eyes. Urium cracked her neck, declaring that the fight had better be interesting or she would just run away. In the ring, Urium's opponent stared back with cold, blue eyes. The Red Dragon repeated her threat, promising to run away from home if this fight wasn't fun. In the stands, students placed their bets. One boy, initially distracted by the redhead's looks, was quickly corrected by his friend. He then confidently chose the blonde, Sofia Vorkova. His reasoning was simple. Sofia was a product of RIL. She was part of Russia's infamous Hunter Special Task Force, a group notorious for training methods that were closer to torture. A large, scarred man, Sofia's chaperone, screamed encouragement from the sidelines. Sofia found his presence utterly embarrassing. Urium seized the opportunity to taunt her, remarking on how anxious her daddy seemed. She suggested Sofia should just surrender and go back to him. Sofia's expression hardened. She warned Urium to shut her mouth. The air grew heavy as she threatened that her opponent might actually die. Urium's response was a feral grin, welcoming the challenge. The onlookers shivered, admitting both fighters were terrifying. The announcer called the fighters to their positions. Sofia took a boxing stance, while Urium casually held her wooden sword. The starting buzzer sounded. Sofia lunged forward with a rapid-fire series of punches. Urium deftly blocked the assault, conceding that her opponent's speed wasn't bad. She retaliated with a wide swing of her sword. Sofia ducked under the attack, her leg lashing out in a kick that connected with Urium's jacket, tearing the fabric. Urium was genuinely annoyed. The clothes were brand new. Sofia pressed her advantage, her boots thudding against the mat as she closed the distance. The two became a blur of motion, trading blows in a dizzying exchange. Their fight was a chaotic dance of offense and defense. Urium suddenly leaped back, kicking off the chain-link fence to launch herself into the air. She came down on Sofia with a ferocious overhead strike. Sofia crossed her arms to block the blow. A blue aura flared around her limbs, hardening them just enough to stop the sword. She grunted from the impact. Urium's grin widened. The fight resumed its frantic pace. They dodged and weaved, but then Urium's demeanor shifted. She called her opponent an idiot, asking if Sophia really thought she was easy just because she was playing along. With a sudden burst of power, she slammed her fist into Sophia's stomach. The blonde fighter crumpled to the ground. Sophia coughed, spitting blood onto the mat. Urium calmly placed the tip of her wooden sword against Sophia's throat. The duel was over. The announcer declared number 124 the winner. Urium giggled, mocking how easy the fight had been. Sophia's eyes were wide with disbelief and humiliation. As Urium walked away, dismissing the so-called elites as a bunch of losers, Sophia's chaperone rushed to her side. The crowd erupted in murmurs. They realized the redhead hadn't even broken a sweat. She had been toying with her opponent the entire time. The whispers turned cruel, questioning if Sophia was just weak. Some speculated she only made it into RIL because of her looks. Sophia heard it all, her head bowed in shame. A medic informed her chaperone that both her arms were fractured. Sophia clenched her fist, insisting she wasn't finished. Her chaperone just smiled sadly. He told her she did her best, but she couldn't defeat that girl as she was now. He tried to reassure her, saying that loss makes a person stronger. The medic tried to get his attention, but he was lost in his speech. Unseen by him, Sophia was muttering that she never surrendered, her hand gripping a hidden knife. A surge of blue energy pulsed from her. She got to her feet and called out to Urium, who had almost left the ring. Sophia lunged. She flew through the air, propelled by her power, knife aimed at Urium's back. In the stands, Gidi watched. Urium turned, surprised by the sudden attack. Sophia screamed, her voice filled with rage, ordering her to die. The crowd gasped in shock at Sophia's desperate attack. The chaperones and Professor Wien watched with wide eyes, all except for Gidi, who remained completely unfazed. Urium was caught off guard, the knife plunging into her side as both girls crashed to the floor. She looked down at the blade, a grim smile on her face. She admitted that the girl had guts. Before she could react further, Sophia was upon her again, screaming for her to die. Urium managed to dodge, grabbing a fistful of blonde hair to stop her momentum. Sophia grunted in pain. Urium's eyes glowed with red energy as she declared her opponent dead. A brutal barrage of punches followed, each blow echoing through the arena. The students cried out, wondering why no one was stopping her. Urium was a whirlwind of violence, sending other cadets flying as she beat Sophia senseless. Sophia was left a bloody, unconscious mess on the floor. But Urium wasn't finished. She pulled the knife from her own side, her eyes blazing. She promised to do to Sophia what had been done to her. Before she could strike, a hand clamped down on her wrist. It was Mikhailov, Sophia's chaperone, who ordered her to stop. Professor Wyuan quickly intervened, pausing the interview and instructing the mages to create an overlap space. Mages in lab coats raised their hands, and a shimmering blue barrier enveloped the arena, isolating the conflict. Inside the space, Urium furiously demanded to know why she was the only one being blamed. Mikhailov roared back, accusing her of trying to kill his daughter. Urium argued that she was only defending herself, but Mikhailov insisted she could have simply knocked Sophia out. Urium retorted that perhaps he should have raised his daughter better, which only escalated the tension. Wyuan stepped between them, suggesting that Urium receive medical treatment while they located her guardian. Urium protested, still furious, but Wyuan calmly stated that he couldn't allow the situation to worsen. He warned her that making a bigger deal of things could affect her entire family. He leaned in closer, his voice a whisper, reminding her that she wasn't the only one in the Yu family. An image of BOM and Gul flashed through Urium's mind. Wyuan asked if she would be upset if her family was harmed because of her actions. As he suggested they wait for her guardian, a voice cut in. Gidi stepped into the overlap space, announcing himself as Urium's guardian. He told Wyuan to stop cornering an injured child and suggested they talk outside. Wyuan looked surprised, and Urium was silent. In a private room, Wyuan served tea, remarking that it was said to calm the mind. He mentally noted that Gidi must be a high-level ranker to have entered the overlap space so easily, yet he had never heard of the Yu household. He decided he would need to investigate them. He began by apologizing for the incident, expressing relief that neither girl was too badly hurt. Sophia was recovering in the infirmary, and Urium had already been discharged. He proposed that they resolve the issue amicably, an offer Mikhailov considered with a grunt. Mikhailov then introduced himself and apologized on behalf of his daughter, attributing her actions to youthful immaturity. Before he could finish, Gidi interrupted, stating that he would not accept the apology. He saw no point in an apology from someone who wasn't directly involved. Mikhailov was taken aback, reminding Gidi of his affiliation with RIL. Gidi calmly replied that they were not in the same position and questioned if this was how people from RIL apologized. Mikhailov grew angry, asking if he was expected to bring his injured daughter to apologize. GD's simple yes left him speechless. Yun tried to de-escalate the situation, but GD pressed on. He clarified that his issue wasn't with Sophia, but with Mikhailov for failing to stop her when she charged with a knife. Mikhailov claimed it happened too quickly, an excuse GD dismissed as foolish. He asked if Mikhailov wasn't embarrassed to use his child to cover for his own lack of skill. Mikhailov's patience snapped. He unleashed his power, demanding to know if GD wanted to make an enemy of RIL. He scoffed at GD's unknown family name, his eyes glowing with energy. Suddenly, he froze, a look of shock on his face. GD was holding the very knife Sophia had used, its blade pressed against his own neck. He couldn't comprehend how or when GD had moved. GD pointed out that his sheath was too loose, which was why he hadn't noticed the child stealing his weapon in the first place, a claim Mikhailov vehemently denied. GD's voice dropped to a low, chilling tone. He advised Mikhailov to avoid empty alleyways. The threat hung in the air, leaving the soldier pale and trembling. GD stood, announcing his departure. Yun watched him go, a bead of sweat on his brow, while Mikhailov looked like he'd just seen a ghost and was questioning all his life choices. The professor could only manage a nervous laugh. GD found Urium waiting outside. He asked if she was all right. She shrugged it off, saying it was just a scratch and that reds were hard to kill. After a moment of silence, she hesitantly asked if he thought she was in the wrong. She confessed that she was upset, but wondered if she should have been the bigger person. He told her she did well. Then, with a cold look, he added that next time, she should kill her opponent where there were no witnesses. He turned and walked away. A slow smile spread across Urium's face. She skipped to catch up with him, warning him not to regret what he said. He had told her to do it, after all. His only reply was a simple, okay. As they walked down the sterile corridor, GD instructed Urium to pack her things upon returning home. She was to move into the lair dorms immediately. Urium smirked, already imagining Gul's overly enthusiastic reaction to the news. Their departure was halted by Professor Yun. He approached with a beaming smile, asking for a moment of their time. GD was suspicious, believing their business had concluded. Yun explained that he had an offer for Urium, an opportunity she should hear. The redhead, however, had no interest in more nagging. Yun offered her the position of freshman representative for the Blue Dragon School. He promised it would make her the face of the school, complete with scholarships, artifacts, and media attention. GD questioned the professor's authority to make such a grand offer on his own. Yun casually mentioned he was friends with Vice Principal Manhwa, a name that made GD's expression darken. Yun urged them to consider the unique opportunity. GD knew exactly what Yun and Manhwa were: demonic humans. Unlike superhumans who received blessings, these beings took on the void, craving negative emotions like rage and lust. They had been a plague upon the world, and in past lives, GD had lost someone precious to them. He had imagined killing Yun countless times since they first met, restraining his killing intent only because the professor had to die bearing a much heavier burden. He forced himself to remain calm, telling the professor that the decision rested with Urium. Yun laughed, agreeing it was ultimately her choice. He turned his charm on Urium, promising a new future for the school if she would help him. Her response was blunt and immediate. She didn't want to. Yun's smile froze. She turned to GD, ready to go home and pack. The professor, utterly baffled, asked why she had even bothered with the interview. Urium yawned, explaining that she had been lying in bed, got bored, and wanted to fight. Yun's facade began to crack. GD directed Urium's attention to the window below. A crowd of reporters had gathered. Yun explained they were waiting for a statement on the day's events, implying that her future at the academy depended on his words. Urium, however, remained unimpressed. She told him she didn't get it and said goodbye, turning to leave with GD. Yun was left speechless, his expression twisting into a scowl as he warned her not to regret her decision. As they stepped outside, they were mobbed. Reporters swarmed them, shoving microphones in Urium's face and asking about the knife fight. The chaotic scene was a flurry of flashing cameras and shouting questions. One reporter held up a screen showing the fight going viral, asking if this was a stunt to revive her family's name. They demanded to know what her plans were at the school. GD tried to shield her, but she stepped forward with a grin. She grabbed a reporter's walkie-talkie, asked what she'd be doing at Lair. She leaned into the device, and with a smirk that promised chaos, she gave a single, explosive answer that was bleeped out on every news channel, but still managed to get the point across more effectively than 1,000 words. Later, at their new dorm, the mood was entirely different. Gul was practically vibrating with excitement. She marveled at the sheer size of the place. She immediately called dibs on the best room and dashed up the stairs, with Urium right behind her, insisting the biggest room was hers. Gul peeked into a room, her eyes sparkling. It was spacious and sunlit, absolutely perfect. She happily flopped on a bed, exploring every corner of her new paradise. Her joy was short-lived. Urium appeared in the doorway and declared the room was hers because the balcony was perfect for smoking. Gul protested that she called it first and reminded Urium that she had wanted the biggest room, which was the other one. After a tense standoff, Gul relented. Urium patted her head like a pet, calling her a good girl. In another part of the dorm, BOM was peacefully misting the large, blue egg with a spray bottle. She greeted it softly, calling it her baby. When GD asked what she was doing, she explained it was like prenatal education, since blue dragons love water. The egg's polymorph state as a pendant would soon fade as it neared hatching. BOM then mentioned that Urium was all anyone at Lair was talking about. GD pulled up a news clip of the interview. The comment section, a mix of awe and disgust. BOM quickly covered the egg with her hands, hoping her dear Jewel hadn't heard the vulgarity. Meanwhile, Urium, lounging upside down on the sofa, wondered what all the fuss was about. Gul, ever innocent, asked what the word meant. A wicked grin spread across Urium's face as she announced it was time for the little chick to learn about the birds and the bees. Gul panicked, trying to refuse the lesson, but Urium declared she didn't have the right to refuse. As Urium prepared to impart her worldly wisdom, Gul shrieked in terror, screaming for GD to save her. He stood by, watching the chaos unfold, as Bomb discreetly put headphones on the egg. A new day dawned, bright and peaceful. In her sunlit room, Urium was fast asleep, exhausted from the previous day's events. The tranquility was shattered by the sound of frantic footsteps. Gul burst into the room, shouting for Urium to wake up. Annoyed, Urium grumbled about being tired from staying up all night. When Gul asked what she was doing, Urium replied with a lewd grin that she was watching porn. Gul, flustered, quickly insisted that there were more pressing matters at hand and dragged her sister downstairs. In the living room, GD and BOM were gathered around the blue egg. Urium asked what was going on. BOM looked up. The egg, she announced, was about to hatch. Just then, a crack appeared on its surface. The four of them watched in anticipation as a new life prepared to enter the world. For GD, the moment was bittersweet. The last time he had witnessed a birth, it had been anything but beautiful. He was transported back to a desolate, war-torn landscape, where a dying woman had begged him to save her child. It had been too late. The baby, born into a world of chaos and destruction, had died almost instantly. The memory was a painful one, a reminder of a past he had tried to forget. He wondered why it was surfacing now, in this moment of peace. A sharp crack brought him back to the present. A tiny, clawed hand punched through the shell, followed by a pair of small, leathery wings. A moment later, a small, blue dragon hatchling poked its head out, blinking in the bright light. BOM and Gul cooed, congratulating the newborn. The little dragon, Jewel, shyly covered her face with a piece of her shell. Bomb gently wiped the amniotic fluid from the hatchling's face with a soft cloth. GD noted that she seemed experienced, and she explained that their mother used to do the same for them, though usually with her tongue. She offered the baby to GD, but he declined. Gul, on the other hand, was practically bouncing with eagerness to hold her new sister. Bomb carefully handed the fragile hatchling over. Gul hugged the baby close, overcome with a feeling of pure bliss. She then turned to Urium, insisting she hold the baby too. Despite her protests, Gul thrust the hatchling into her arms. The tiny dragon let out a big yawn, and Urium found herself staring at the small creature in her lap. She had to admit, the baby was cute. Gul then turned her attention to GD, suggesting he should hold the baby as well. Urium saw her chance. With a mischievous grin, she announced she was going to throw the baby at him, and it wouldn't be her fault if he didn't catch her. Her one goal since moving in, she declared, was to see him panic. She launched the baby through the air. To her disappointment, GD caught the hatchling. Gul remarked that he was definitely not normal, and Urium clicked her tongue in frustration. BOM suggested he pet the baby, since she was already in his arms. After a moment of hesitation, GD gently stroked the hatchling's head. The baby dragon cooed, a blush on her tiny cheeks. Gul immediately started snapping pictures, wanting to capture the rare moment. BOM suggested they all take a picture together, producing a red rose from thin air. She tucked the rose behind GD's ear and placed a blue flower on the baby's head. The resulting image was a strange one. GD, looking thoroughly unimpressed with the flower in his hair, holding a baby dragon, flanked by three very different young women. He grumbled for them to hurry up. Gul encouraged a reluctant Urium to join in and snap the picture. It was a first family photo of a very unusual family. Later, BOM was preparing to teach the hatchling how to polymorph. She explained to GD that she would use a magic transfer to teach the spell. This technique involved flowing her own mana into the baby, a process that would eat away at her own lifespan. GD asked if she was sure, but BOM insisted it was necessary. Unlike the others, who had learned to polymorph in their homeland, the newborn Jewel knew nothing. Dragons grow fast, and BOM wanted her to experience the world before she got too big. GD offered his help if she needed it. BOM had one favor to ask. She wanted him to stay by her side while she performed the magic transfer. He agreed, but she told him he was too far away. She patted the spot next to her on the couch, telling him not to be shy. It was necessary, she insisted, in case she grew tired and dropped the baby. The thought of the hatchling getting hurt was enough to make her tear up. GD sighed and moved to sit beside her. As his arm brushed against hers, Bomb blushed, stammering that it was hard. When he asked what was hard, she quickly corrected herself, saying the couch was hard. He pointed out that it was full-grain leather, and she cleared her throat, flustered, before beginning the spell. A soft, green light enveloped them. A few days passed in the new dorm. The mana transfer was finally over. Bomb collapsed onto the couch, completely drained. GD commended her for her hard work, and she weakly returned the sentiment. Announcing she needed to rest, she staggered toward her room, reminding him to feed and burp Joel. As she walked, her legs gave out. She let out a surprised gasp as GD caught her in his arms. He would take her to her room. A deep blush crept across Bomb's face. She mumbled that being held like this was a bit embarrassing, but he noted she still had enough energy to make jokes. She giggled, hoping she wasn't too heavy. He simply replied that she was light, a surprisingly sweet comment that left her momentarily speechless. He gently laid her down in bed and quietly closed the door behind him. Leaving her room, he felt a surge of mana. He stopped alerted. He wondered if it could be happening already. A soft blue light pulsed from the living room. He entered to find a small, blue-haired child standing where the dragon hatchling had been. GD stared, a bead of sweat tracing his temple. He offered an awkward greeting. Later, at the Laird District Police Station, his colleagues were celebrating. They praised him for single-handedly catching criminals the entire superhuman investigation team couldn't find for months. The team leader, flashing a gold card, offered to treat everyone to a meal. His female colleague immediately called him out, asking if he was paying with the corporate card, the legendary Excalibur of middle management. Flustered, GD announced he had business to attend to and would be leaving early. His colleagues playfully accused him of having a secret girlfriend. He denied it flatly before taking his leave. The person who had just left the station was not the real UGD. It was his clone, the Shadow of the Grand Duke, a skill he had acquired after killing a demon lord in a past life. The Shadow clone walked through the city until she found GD sitting on a park bench. She approached and addressed him as her lord. Her eyes widened when she saw the tiny, blue-haired child sitting in his lap. GD explained that it was Joel, now polymorphed into her human form. A passing couple commented on what a perfect family they looked like. The clone offered to hold the child, but Joel shot her a piercing glare, which visibly startled the powerful shadow being. GD calmly stated that Joel could walk on her own. The clone asked why he had brought the child outside when the others were at home. He explained that BOM was on bed rest, and the other two were not yet responsible enough to babysit. GD then changed the subject, stating he knew her emotions and memories. The clone looked down, hesitant. She confessed that she was beginning to question her mission. Her previous masters had used her for grand tasks like assassination or displays of power, yet he was using her for simple, everyday office work. She apologized if her words were out of line. GD understood her feelings, but told her there was something she must do soon. Until then, she was to keep going to work. He also suggested she go for a drink with her teammates, adding that soon enough, she wouldn't be able to see them anymore. With a nod of understanding, the clone departed. Left alone, GD watched Joel. Nearby, a mother praised her daughter for wanting a teddy bear so much, and a little girl hugged the toy, proclaiming her love for her mom. Joel watched them, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. GD asked if she wanted one too. Reaching into a pocket of dark space, he pulled out a blue teddy bear. He handed it to her, and her face lit up. He asked if she liked it. She hugged the bear tightly, but then dropped it and toddled back toward him, thinking she wanted another one. He told her he didn't have any more. But she wasn't looking at the toy. She reached up with her tiny hands, cupped his face, and pressed her forehead against his. The unexpected affection stunned him. He wondered if she was imitating the mana transfer she had witnessed. The innocent gesture triggered a violent flash of memories, of past failures, endless battles, and the cold gaze of a man who had lost everything. He closed his eyes, the gears of time grinding in his mind. When he opened them, he was back in the park. Joel looked up at him, puzzled. For the first time in a long time, a genuine, faint smile touched his lips. Joel's tiny hand clutched GD's finger as they walked home under a dusky sky, her new bear dragging along beside her. He looked up, a flicker of awareness crossing his features. He murmured that she was already on her way. Just then, Joel's cheerful voice called out to him. She ran over and immediately scooped Joel into a hug, asking where they had been. Holding the small child close, Joel seemed to know exactly what was on her mind, asking if she was happy about the gift from GD. He questioned how she knew, and Gul explained that dragons could relay feelings through skin contact. The memory of Joel pressing her forehead against his flashed in his mind. He admitted he hadn't known that. Gul giggled, surprised to find something he was unaware of. GD then asked what she was carrying on her back. With a sly grin, she revealed a guitar case. She pulled out a brand new guitar, proudly declaring that she would use it to express her soul. She asked if she looked like a musician, ready to play her version of Wonderwall at any moment, promising she would try her best. GD's face remained impassive, but his mind was flooded with a dark memory from another timeline. A broken guitar, and a blood-soaked, hollow-eyed ghoul kneeling on the floor. He remembered his own grim expression and her look of utter despair. Snapping back to the present, he watched Ghoul fumble with the strings, her fingers already sore. He told her not to try too hard. She protested, wanting to know why, but he simply repeated that she shouldn't overextend herself. She pouted, but he changed the subject, asking if BOM was awake yet. Ghoul informed him that BOM was still asleep with a fever, a result of the mana transfer. When he asked about Yoriam, Ghoul explained she had locked herself in her room, completely absorbed in watching dramas for the first time. GD conceded that it was better than her causing trouble outside. As they entered the dorm, his expression suddenly hardened. Ghoul, noticing the shift, wondered if BOM was awake. GD grabbed her shoulder, his voice low and urgent. He ordered her to take Jewel to her room and stay there until he said otherwise. The intensity in his eyes was terrifying, and Ghoul, though confused, quickly agreed. She scooped up Jewel and hurried down the hall. Once they were gone, GD turned his attention to Bomb's room. He gripped the handle and slowly opened the door. Inside, armored knights stood silently around Bomb's bed. One of them turned to him, its voice a low growl, demanding to know if he was responsible for the Green Dragon's condition. These were the Guardians, ancient beings bound to protect the lair and serve as bodyguards for the hatchlings. They stood vigil over the sleeping Biome. GD realized they had used sleep magic on her. The lead knight stomped forward, repeating his demand for an answer. GD calmly suggested they introduce themselves first. The knight scoffed, declaring that the right to ask questions belonged to the strong as a dark aura filled the room. GD noted the high-level barrier magic. The knight gave him one last chance, insisting he answer for what he had done agreeing. GD explained that the blue dragon had been born and that BOM had simply exhausted herself teaching the newborn how to polymorph. The knight then asked who he was. GD declared himself their guardian, a title the knight found ridiculous. GD countered that he knew exactly who he was protecting, then asked how they had arrived so quickly from the distant dimension where they had been scattered. His knowledge stunned them. The lead knight declared that he knew too much for a human. He introduced his order as the guardians of the children and keepers of causality. While they acknowledged GD's help, they deemed him an unjust presence who would cause future trouble. GD asked if they could talk it through. The knight told him not to worry, promising a painless end as they all lunged forward to attack. The lead guardian charged with a roar, swinging his massive sword in a blur of purple energy. GD met the blow with a flick of his wrist, stopping the powerful attack cold. The knight was stunned that his sword of stallion had been so easily blocked. GD's own weapon materialized in his hand. With a single, fluid motion, he sidestepped and struck another charging knight, sending the armored warrior crashing to the floor. One of the others chided the fallen knight for his shameful display. They swarmed GD, promising their leader they would finish this human. The leader frantically tried to warn them that their opponent was far stronger than they had anticipated. His eyes glowed as GD unleashed a whirlwind of strikes, his formless sword cleaving through armor and magic alike. In seconds, the room fell silent. The armored bodies of the guardians lay in pieces on the floor, all except for their leader. The knight now understood. He knew he was facing a transcendent being, an entity that could not be meddled with. He slowly rose to his feet, his posture one of defeat. GD remarked that he had told them they should have talked. The guardian could only ask if this entire world was under GD's rule. GD ignored the question and demanded to know how they had all survived the dimensional instability. The knight explained that it was because of a twist of dimension. Their lord had opened a gate, but it had somehow warped, throwing them into the chaotic dimensional boundary. GD pressed for more information. The knight recounted what his lord once said about a horizon of providence, a power that had caused the other dimensions to twist. This was new information. GD had never heard of the horizon of providence in any of his past lives. This entire timeline was proving to be different. The guardians themselves had never appeared before. He asked if this horizon had helped them. The knight clarified that it was a will from beyond the horizon. It had guided him through the chaos, allowing him to gather the others and find hatchlings. GD needed to be sure. He placed a hand on the knight's helmet, ordering him to look into his eyes. An ancient power, the scales of balance eye, flared to life. It was an authority that could discern truth from falsehood. He confirmed the knight was being honest. A cold dread washed over him. He had meticulously eliminated every potential threat he knew of, yet an unknown variable had just appeared. The knight continued, saying the will they encountered felt dissatisfied, as if it were cursing something. He had only heard it because of the green dragon's core within his armor. Frustration building, GD clenched his fist. He grabbed the knight's chest plate, his grip crushing the metal. The knight grunted in pain. He saw the core glowing faintly inside the cracked armor. Suddenly, a new power stirred within him. The Grand Clock, an authority that rejected elements that deviated from the timeline, began to activate. It had always remained dormant, except during regression, but now it was designating these new elements as enemies to be investigated. For now, all he could do was wait. The golden light faded. He asked the surviving guardians what they planned to do now that he was watching over the dragons. Since the dimensional twist should have dispelled their subjugation magic, they had no reason to stay. He told them he didn't care what they did, as long as they caused no trouble. The other knights hesitantly prepared to leave. GD gave them a nod of dismissal. However, the leader remained, stating that he could not leave. As the guardian of history and causality, his duty was here. GD responded by kicking him so hard his helmet scraped the floor. He stood over the knight and asked him again if he was leaving. The knight insisted he couldn't. GD stomped on his chest and asked for the last time. His voice was chillingly calm as he repeated the question one final time. Through gritted teeth, the knight once again refused. The other guardians simply shook their heads. They informed GD that their leader was a dull and foolish man by nature and told him to do as he wished. GD paused and then agreed. He declared that this one was indeed fit to be a guardian, before vaporizing the other knights in a flash of light. The sole survivor asked if this had been a test. GD said it wasn't, admitting he simply found the knight's loyalty unusual. While he respected that loyalty, he was the one protecting the green dragon now. He asked what a weaker guardian could possibly do. After a moment, he said there was one role the knight could fill. He brought the knight out to meet the girls. Standing beside the imposing warrior, who was now wearing a pink apron, he announced that he had hired a new janitor. The knight was demoted faster than a meme stock's plummet. The ancient guardian of causality could only stare back. The newly appointed janitor diligently washed the dishes, scrubbing them clean before letting out a weary sigh. He confronted GD, questioning his new role and how washing dishes was supposed to help protect the dragons. GD calmly stated that he alone was sufficient protection and had only created the position out of pity. He warned the ancient knight that if he couldn't even handle janitorial duties, he would be destroyed. The knight returned to the sink, wondering how his life had come to this. Just then, a recovered Boehm entered the kitchen. The knight, startled, quickly addressed her as Lady Baum, asking if she was all right. She reassured him that it was just a minor sickness. She mentioned hearing about his new job, and he glumly confirmed it. Boehm smiled and told him the apron looked good on him, adding that she looked forward to working with him. The compliment made the stoic guardian blush under his helmet. He puffed out his chest and declared that he would handle all chores, vowing that she would never have to lift a finger. In his zealous declaration, he crushed the expensive plate he was holding. Boehm could only stare at the shattered porcelain. Elsewhere, Gul was having a fashion show for Joel, taking endless photos of her adorable little sister. Boehm had ordered the clothes as soon as she felt better. Joel was clearly delighted with her new wardrobe, unable to hide her happy smile. Gul turned to the janitor, asking which outfit he liked best. He diplomatically replied that they all suited her perfectly, earning him praise for his smooth words. GD watched the scene unfold. Gul, flustered by his gaze, turned her attention back to her hobby. Looking at his calloused hands, GD remarked that she was still playing the guitar. Boehm defended her, but he clarified he hadn't meant it harshly. He then asked about Urium, who had been missing all day. The janitor reported that he had tried to clean her room, but was rejected. He had been worried about her poor complexion, but she had just told him to get lost. Boehm giggled, explaining it was probably because Urium hadn't slept at all. GD's expression grew serious. He went to Urium's door and peered inside, his eyes narrowing at the state of the room. It was a disaster zone of empty bottles and cigarette butts. Urium asked what he wanted, and he replied that he was just checking to see if she was still alive. A patriotic cry from the TV caught his attention. He asked what she was watching. She explained it was a terrible 7-season drama with a bad story and worse historical accuracy. He suggested that she simply not watch it then. She sarcastically called him a genius. He ignored her tone and told her to come out. He had something to tell her. Gathering the dragons in the living room, GD announced they were going to deep clean the house. He explained that while they weren't human, they needed to live like them while on Earth, and that started with not living in filth, especially Urium and Gul. Gul was aghast that he had entered her room without permission, but he shut her down by asking if her mother had ever told her to clean her room. He assigned a living room and kitchen to the janitor and ordered the girls to clean their own rooms. Urium immediately protested, saying it was bullshit to clean when they had a janitor for that. As she spoke, she casually picked her nose and flicked the booger at Gul, who shrieked in horror. Urium just shrugged, so GD suggested that if Gul hated dirty things so much, she should probably clean her own room. Defeated, Urium told Lumpy to clean her room while she went to the gym. Boehm, whose room was already clean, announced she was going grocery shopping. GD just nodded, a dark memory of her past cooking attempts flashing through his mind. She asked if he wanted anything specific, but he just wished her a safe trip. The janitor began the monumental task of cleaning Urium's room. The stench was worse than the demon world, and he wondered if she was training poison resistance. As he started bagging the trash, GD's clone appeared, chiding him for not knowing the basics of recycling. The knight sensed the demonic energy from the clone and wondered how uncivilized his homeland must be to not have recycling. The clone, acting just like the real GD, impatiently told him to hurry up. The knight begrudgingly complied. Just then, the real GD walked in and asked what they were doing. The clone explained he was giving the janitor advice, using a demon world maxim to insult him. GD ordered his clone to help clean, much to the clone's dismay. While Urium was at the gym, BOM was shopping, and Gul was cleaning her closet. The two powerful beings cleaned Urium's room under GD's watch. Later that evening, the clone reported the job was done. GD then gave him his next assignment. Moscow, Russia, an organization called Invisibility, was researching a transcendent demonic human there. The clone was to wrap up his police work and head to Russia within the week to find a Commander-class Prototype X. The clone understood and prepared to leave. BOM returned home with a bounty of groceries. As the clone was about to depart, GD stopped him. He needed the clone to swap clothes with him. That night, it was GD, disguised in the clone's suit, who cooked a magnificent dinner. The dragons were amazed. Gul even said it tasted like food from her home world. She wished the janitor could eat with them, but Urium pointed out the obvious lack of a mouth. Meanwhile, the real GD stood outside in his casual clothes, the clone's words echoing in his mind. He finally understood why he had been called out for this seemingly mundane task. In a closed industrial complex near Lair, GD stood over a gruesome scene of slaughtered demonic humans. The last survivor cursed at him, struggling on the ground as he threatened the lowly human with the power of his backers. GD calmly replied that he knew all too well who was backing him before plunging his sword into the demon's leg. He lifted the creature by its hair, identifying its master as Professor Wynn of the Blue Dragon School, or rather, a member of the demonic organization Invisibility. He demanded to know what Yuan was plotting. Using his scales of balance, I had to compel the truth. He listened as the demon sputtered that he didn't know the details, only that Yuan would be chosen for one of the seats if he succeeded in his plan within 3 months. The seats referred to the 4 chosen leaders of Invisibility, who held disaster-level power and commanded their own legions. This was a deviation from GD's past lives. Yuan had never risen to such a rank before. As GD contemplated this new variable, the Grand Clock Authority began to activate again. It read the malice from beyond the horizon of Providence and identified Yuan as a being who had deviated from the world's timeline. An outside entity, discontent with his regressions, had interfered, imbuing Yuan with elements from past timelines. First the Guardians, now this. GD's musings were interrupted by the demon's pleas for mercy, offering to gather more information, and even pulling the sick mother at home card. GD was unmoved. He swiftly decapitated the creature, reminding the severed head that its lies were useless, though it would have died either way. He then incinerated the entire building, leaving no trace behind. Back at a park near the lair, he considered the implications. Yuan's plan had to be massive and was likely connected to the Academy's end-of-year event. His thoughts were broken by the sound of people fawning over a cute baby. He turned to see a crowd gathered around BOM and Joel. The onlookers cooed over Joel's name and adorable appearance. BOM noticed him and called out. His sudden, intense glare was enough to disperse the crowd instantly. He and BOM sat on a bench, and she asked where he'd been. He explained that he'd been out to spend some quality time with Joel before school started. A gentle smile graced her lips as she looked at him. She commented that sitting there together made them feel like a family, with Joel as their daughter and her as the mother. This would, of course, make them. GD's serious expression remained unchanged, and Boom burst into laughter, admitting she was only kidding. He picked up Joel, and they started for home as the sun began to set. The next day, students in their crisp, new uniforms streamed onto the Lair campus. Gul was ecstatic, a piece of toast hanging from her mouth in classic anime fashion. She eagerly asked Byom about her classes, but Byom was more curious about the toast, since Gul had already eaten breakfast. With a knowing smile, Gul explained an old dragon legend. If you bump into someone while running with toast in your mouth, that person is your destined partner. Just as she imagined meeting her fated love, she bumped right into Urium. With a wicked grin, Urium asked if that made her the destined partner. When Gul sputtered that she was a girl, before snatching the toast right out of Gul's mouth. Urium then asked where GD was, as he was supposed to attend their class observation. His absence the previous day made her wonder if he was seeing someone, a comment that made Boom break into a nervous sweat. Gul pointed out Bomb's sudden perspiration, but her attention was drawn to a new commotion. A crowd of reporters had gathered on campus, looking for noteworthy freshmen. They immediately zeroed in on the infamous Urium, the girl who beat up Sophia and gave that shocking one-word interview. The reporters swarmed her, shoving microphones in her face. Uriam's patience snapped. She let out a furious roar, telling everyone to shut up. Announcing that her last answer was apparently not enough, she declared she would take them all on, one by one. With a feral grin, she challenged the trash reporters to come at her. Left alone in the quiet dorm, Jewel sat staring into space, clutching her teddy bear. The Guardian stood nearby with unease. The situation was, he concluded, profoundly awkward. Before leaving, GD had given him his orders. With the others at school and GD himself away, the Guardian was tasked with taking care of the child. This new duty felt infinitely more daunting than cleaning. The knight had no experience whatsoever with children. He tentatively addressed the small girl, who was still waiting by the door. He suggested she might be more comfortable resting elsewhere, explaining that everyone would be back in the evening. Jewel simply looked at him, her silence only amplifying the knight's discomfort. This was, he thought again, incredibly awkward. Deciding that action was better than idleness, the Guardian resolved to clean, but a glance into the living room showed him Jewel's scattered toys. He paused, then approached her again. He offered to read a picture book with her, holding one up hopefully. They sat on the floor together, and to the Guardian's relief, Jewel's eyes sparkled with interest. He felt a wave of relief, glad she was intrigued by the book. He announced the title with great solemnity. My dad is a fairy. He began to read the first line about a forest long ago, immediately interpreting it as the primordial forest from before the Demon Age, a place filled with monstrous flora and fauna. The story introduced a girl named Dalsun and her father. The Guardian grimly deduced that the mother must have died, noting that having even one parent alive in that era was a miracle. When the story mentioned the father telling bedtime stories, the knight assumed they were tales of the Great War, making Dalsun a war fanatic in his eyes, much to Jewel's confusion. The tale continued with the father disappearing one morning. The Guardian logically concluded he had gone to find a new mother, as it was customary in that era to take female war captives as concubines. Dalsun must be overjoyed, he narrated, to be getting a new mother. He was about to continue when he noticed Jewel's horrified expression. He asked what was wrong, wondering if she disliked the story. The little girl pointed a decisive finger toward the television. Accepting his defeat, the Guardian retreated to a corner while Jewel happily watched cartoons. Meanwhile, at Lair Academy, the first day of school was underway. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and a student stepped out. Other students watched her arrival. Her name was Gong Jihe, successor to the prestigious Gong swordsmanship clan. She complained about sword training ruining her makeup, then noticed a large crowd of reporters gathered nearby, arrogantly assuming they were there for her. She haughtily told her secretary to handle them, but he flatly informed her they were not there for her. Before she could process the insult, she shoved past the reporters, leaving her bewildered. The press had swarmed Uriam. Gul stood beside her, puzzled as to how another student had become Uriam's personal chair. Uriam simply stated that the boy had wanted to. The boy in question confirmed this with a blissful smile, declaring himself her fan. Facing the media frenzy, Uriam reluctantly agreed to an interview, setting a strict rule of one quick question per person. She pointed to a reporter in a hat, who was promptly cut off for taking too long to ask his question. The next reporter from CT France asked how she felt about her recent fame. She picked her nose and replied that it sucked, before calling for the next question. Another reporter mentioned a new fan cafe and asked for a word for her fans. Uriam glanced at the boy she was sitting on and called them all idiots. Then, a particularly greasy reporter named Park Gango stepped forward. He pressed her about the explicit word she had shouted during her entrance interview. Disgusted by his sweat, Uriam shot back, asking why he was so obsessed with it. The reporter continued to probe, asking why she chose that specific word, a slimy smile spreading across his face as he hinted at ulterior motives. He had the audacity to ask if she wanted to do that with him, framing it as a joke. Uriam's eyes glowed with rage as she questioned why he kept clinging to her words if he knew it was a joke. The reporter smugly replied that it was his job and that she needed to cooperate. Gul tried to de-escalate, but it was too late. The reporter's grin widened, seeing her aggression as a way to boost views. He decided to provoke her further, threatening to write an article claiming she demanded relations from him. That was a last straw. Promising to kill him before he could publish anything, Uriam lunged forward, her fist flying. But before it could connect, a hand caught her wrist. Ujidi had arrived. Gul expressed her relief at his timely appearance, while Jidi drily asked Uriam if she had already caused trouble. Enraged, Uriam tried to explain that the reporter was the problem, but Jidi simply hoisted her over his shoulder. She kicked and screamed for him to put her down as he announced the interview was over. With a final, chilling glare, he warned the reporters not to publish anything about the incident. A wave of unseen force erupted from him, shattering every camera lens in the crowd, leaving Uriam momentarily stunned into silence. Jidi then called out to Gul, telling her to get inside before she was late. From a distance, Gong Jihe and her bodyguard watched the scene unfold, completely shocked. He suggested to find out which clan the red-haired girl belonged to. Gong, however, was distracted by something else entirely, noting that the blonde girl's chest was massive. In a large lecture hall, a man with a tidy mustache introduced himself to the class as Professor Kai of swordsmanship. His lesson for the day was on the history and mindset of a sword wielder, a topic that made Yuriam immediately zone out. She sat beside GD, wishing the professor would just get to the fighting part already. GD commented on his surprise that she hadn't stormed out yet. She huffed, claiming she had endured boring dramas before and could handle this. Her true motivation was the burning desire to one day crush a certain hooded, armored figure from her past. She turned to GD, questioning why he was even in her class instead of with his own kind. She insisted she'd been behaving perfectly well lately, but he dryly reminded her of her attempt to assault a reporter just that morning, which left her speechless. She leaned against him, trying to get a reaction. She teased him, asking if he was embarrassed since most men enjoyed such contact. He remained completely unfazed, his stoicism making her pout. She slumped onto her desk, calling him boring. A kidnapper, she declared, should at least be interesting. She recalled how powerful he had seemed at first, expecting her days to be filled with thrilling moments. This family roleplay was not what she signed up for. GD pointed out that their commute to school alone had been stimulating enough. She shot up from her seat, clarifying that she meant real fighting and killing, not petty drama. Her outburst did not go unnoticed by the professor. With a glint in his eye, he calmly instructed both her and her chaperone to stay after class. Their punishment was to clean training swords in a storage room. Yuriam scrubbed a wooden blade with furious energy, her face contorted in a snarl. She slammed a pile of swords down, screaming that she would rather take a beating than do this chore. She suggested they call the armored janitor from home to do it, but GD countered by asking who would watch Joel. Changing the subject, she asked if he had studied when he was young. He replied that he hadn't had time. He was too busy trying to survive a war. His stark reply left her silent for a moment. She accused him of messing with her again, a strange look in her eyes. When she asked if his life was any fun, he admitted it wasn't. She couldn't fathom how someone so strong could live such a dull life. He simply said that life continues, and he couldn't give up. She dismissed his words as an edgy teenage line, and he told her to get back to work. That evening, the mood in the dorm was quiet. Yuriam sat on the couch, while BOM and Jewel played with blocks on the floor. The red dragon was trying and failing to solve a Rubik's Cube. She twisted it over and over in frustration, finally snapping at the Guardian for hovering nearby and distracting her. Baum gently observed that Yuriam seemed to be in a bad mood. Yuriam admitted it was a lack of thrill from not having fought recently. She then addressed the green dragon by name, a rare occurrence that made BOM gasp and ask if she was sick. Annoyed, Yuriam asked if she should just go back to calling her you. Getting serious, she asked Baum a simple question. Why do you live? The profound query left BOM and Jewel staring blankly. BOM whispered to Jewel that Yuriam must be entering puberty, which the red dragon angrily overheard. Yuriam explained that she had asked GD the same question, mimicking his somber reply. She concluded that since he feels no joy, he has no reason to live, as enjoyment is the purpose of life. She pointed out that Gul finds happiness in food, and Joel finds it with a teddy bear. BOM suggested that perhaps GD had joys he simply didn't share. Yuriam then declared that BOM was just like him, unreadable and boring. BOM turned the question back on her, asking what she enjoyed. Then, Bomb's eyes lit up as she remembered one thing. She leaned in and whispered that their mister was surprisingly shy. Yuriam called it nonsense, labeling him a tearless psychopath. BOM admitted she had thought so at first too. She reminisced about a quiet moment with him, a fond, slightly creepy smile spreading on her face as she recalled his cute reactions. The smile unnerved Yuriam, who accused BOM of having a secret relationship with him and launched a surprise tickle attack. Their wrestling was interrupted by Gul clattering down the stairs. She burst in with huge news. Yuriam was the talk of the entire Lair community forum and even had a fan cafe now. She stopped short, seeing the compromising position on the floor. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, they were roommates, she thought, before stammering for them to finish up and fleeing the room in a flustered panic. Later, in another part of the house, GD was unbuttoning his shirt when his door creaked open. BOM peeked inside, saying she had something to ask him. Her eyes landed on his chiseled abs, and she immediately slammed the door, apologizing for not knocking. He told her it was fine. She re-entered, now fully dressed in her school uniform, and asked if he could accompany her somewhere that day. As GD adjusted his tie, BOM asked if he would accompany her for the day. He was taken aback by the sudden request, as she pointed out that he often went out with the others, but never with her. He started to explain that the other two were different. Yuriam was a magnet for violence, and Gul could be lured away by a stranger with fried chicken. He trailed off, deciding it wasn't worth explaining. Just then, Gul and Yuriam appeared. Gul, her mouth full of sandwich, asked why they weren't going to school. BOM calmly told her to swallow before speaking, then announced she was asking GD out on a date. Gul choked in surprise, while Urium dryly remarked that she surely meant as a chaperone. Gul chewed thoughtfully, then realized GD never went out with BOM, accusing him of playing favorites. Before GD could deny it, Gul cheerfully declared that favoritism was bad, but she understood. She proudly recounted how her mother used to date 100 men at once, but always had her favorites. Urium commented that her mom sounded wild, a fact Gul happily confirmed. GD wondered aloud if he was one of the 97 abandoned men in this scenario, which made Bohm turn away in a huff. She accused him of kidnapping her only to ignore her, like a fisherman who loses interest in a fish once it's caught. Gul rushed to comfort the dramatically dejected BOM, calling GD mean. Surprisingly, Urium spoke up, giving him permission to go and promising they wouldn't cause trouble. She added that he couldn't watch them forever. Seeing he was out of excuses, GD finally agreed. Later, at Lair's social etiquette class, the students were gathered with their chaperones. BOM, now known as Urium's older sister, was the subject of much gossip. The chaperones whispered about her beauty and her perfect score on the entrance interview, wondering which prestigious family she belonged to. When they learned her family name was Yu, they scoffed at how tacky it sounded. The instructor clapped her hands, announcing that the theory portion of the class was over and it was time to practice social dancing. A student complained about it being embarrassing, but the instructor explained that as future superhumans, they would need to attend formal events. Being clueless on the dance floor would be far more embarrassing. She instructed the students to pair up, encouraging them to be brave and ask someone they liked. Soon, everyone had a partner except for BOM. Other students whispered that she gave off a strange, unapproachable vibe. The instructor approached, pointing out that she was the only one left. BOM laughed it off, saying she wasn't very popular. The instructor insisted she was pretty, but before she could offer to be her partner, BOM asked if she could dance with her chaperone instead. The instructor eagerly agreed, and BOM practically flew across the room to GD. She stood before him, holding out her hand and telling him it was time to go. GD flatly stated that he couldn't dance. With a pitiful pout, BOM asked if he was going to leave her all alone. He sighed in resignation. The instructor began counting out the steps for the other pairs. GD stood stiffly in front of BOM, his expression unreadable. His hands twitched at his sides, unwilling to make the first move. BOM teased him, asking if he was embarrassed to touch her. He denied it, and she quickly took his hands in hers, reassuring him that touching hands wouldn't instantly connect their emotions. With a wicked grin, she added that he had better not slack off, as her grade depended on it. They began to move, GD awkwardly following her lead. They stumbled through the steps, and BOM giggled, pointing out that his hands were sweaty. She held his hand to her cheek, teasing him about being nervous. Her touch against his skin sent an unexpected jolt through her. He flinched, and she lost her balance, tumbling into his arms. For a moment, they were frozen, their faces inches apart. He stared down at her, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. She looked up, her cheeks flushed, and pointed out that her nose was bleeding. Later, in an outdoor cafe, BOM sipped a cool drink. GD asked if she shouldn't go to a hospital, but she assured him dragons didn't need them. He couldn't understand why his nose had started bleeding when she hadn't even hit him. She feigned ignorance, a sly smile playing on her lips. She complimented his dancing, asking if he'd ever learned before. He was silent, a distant memory flickering in his mind of a woman teaching him to dance long ago. It was a memory of a time before the endless regressions, a time when a simple dance could bring a smile to his face. Shaking off the past, he told her he had never learned. She asked if he had plans after school, and when he said no, she invited him to do something fun with her. Far away, under the cold Moscow moon, an alarm blared within a secret research facility belonging to the demonic organization, Invisibility. Red lights flashed down a corridor littered with bloody corpses. A green-haired, demonic human cursed as he ran, realizing their forces were no match for the intruder. He decided to escape and contact headquarters, but a shadowy figure appeared behind him in an instant. It was GD's clone. The demon stammered, asking what he wanted. The clone, his eyes glowing blue, replied that his lord was looking for a Type X transcendent demonic human. The demon spat that he would rather die than talk. The clone was unfazed. He explained that he had learned something from killing their kind. Their true nature shows when they are about to die. When the pain becomes too much, their human facade crumbles. He offered the demon a choice. Would he like to dance under the moonlight too? The demonic researcher lay dead in a pool of blood, the shadow of the Grand Duke looming over her lifeless body. He contacted his lord, GD, reporting that the target known as Type X had already been moved to the Invisibility headquarters. He added a crucial new detail. Unlike in previous timelines, this Type X was female. GD confirmed the name of the chief researcher was Vera and gave his clone a new mission. Disguise himself as the dead woman, infiltrate the headquarters, and discover the true identity of this new Type X. The clone acknowledged the order and vanished. Back in the clothing store, GD processed this information. Prototype X was a commander-class demonic human with the ability to bind countless minds into one, growing more powerful the longer it survived. For this reason, GD had prioritized its destruction in every past life. But now, with its identity changed, his old methods were useless. His Grand Clock authority activated, searching for the source of this deviation, the malice that the Guardian had spoken of. But no matter the obstacle, his goal remained the same. He would eliminate anything that threatened his mission. His thoughts were interrupted by Bomb's voice calling him over. She peeked out from behind a changing room curtain, urging him to hurry. He approached, a confused look on his face, just as she threw the curtain open, revealing herself in a black bikini. She asked him what he thought, explaining that she wanted to buy one for the coming summer. When he remained silent, she invited him inside for a better look, but he saw through her prank immediately. She pouted, insisting that she was having fun, and then teasingly asked if he was having weird thoughts, misinterpreting his anger. Later, as they walked through the mall, she continued to tease him about wanting to look. He told her to stop fooling around so they could go home. She then revealed her true purpose for the shopping trip, buying presents for the others. She explained that Joel's teddy bear was getting ragged, and she wanted to buy a new one, along with gifts for Gul and Yuriam. When GD asked what she got for Yuriam, Bomb recalled how the Red Dragon had excitedly described something she saw in a movie, a request BOM found rather strange. She tasked GD with choosing Joel's present while she looked for the others, then headed off, leaving him alone. She glanced back, wondering if he would be okay on his own. GD found himself in a toy store, completely out of his element. The cashier eyed him curiously, guessing he was a soldier or a model based on his build. She noted his clueless expression and realized he was a prime target for an upsell. Target secured, she thought with a grin. She approached him, asking how old the child was. When he replied for, she gushed over the lovely age, assuming it was for his daughter. He clarified it was for a girl, but not his daughter, so she guessed he was an uncle. Then, she informed him that he had a poor sense of gifts. She snatched a stethoscope from a doctor playset and pressed it against his chest, declaring that this was a much better gift for a 4-year-old than a simple doll. She also mentioned a 10% discount on other sets with its purchase. GD pictured Joel in a tiny nurse's outfit, and, with a predatory grin, the cashier knew she had him hooked. Jackpot, she thought, as he agreed to her suggestions. He ended up with a mountain of presents, paying with a black card reserved for VIP families. The cashier was stunned, suddenly finding the stoic man incredibly charming. Realizing he wasn't married, she decided to shoot her shot and asked if he had a girlfriend. Just then, BOM returned, linking her arm with his. The cashier's face fell, assuming BOM was his girlfriend. BOM, however, playfully chided him for buying the wrong things for Joel. The cashier, now recognizing the school uniform, quickly backpedaled and assumed BOM was his younger sister. BOM calmly informed the woman that Joel wouldn't like the playsets. She simply did not like them. She repeated with a serene smile that left the cashier speechless. BOM then picked up a simple teddy bear, similar to Joel's old one, which GD admitted was his original choice. She then cheekily asked if they could get the VIP discount on it. Back at the dorm that night, the dragons were thrilled with their gifts. Gul loved her new wallet, and Joel hugged her new bear tightly. Gul asked what Yuriam received. With a wicked grin, Yuriam pulled out a whip and a pair of handcuffs, an adult's toy. She advanced on Gul, wanting to try something, and soon, the gold dragon's screams echoed through the house. Amid the chaos, Joel approached GD, showing her gratitude with a simple touch. BOM then presented him with a gift of her own, a new tie, since she had noticed he always wore the same one. She promised to buy him a full suit one day when she had her own money. He managed a quiet thanks. He told her she should have bought something for herself too, but she revealed that she had. What was it? With a mysterious smile, she said she would show him later, her mind flashing to the black bikini hanging in her closet. A few weeks passed. GD summoned the Guardian to his room. He announced he would be away for 3 days and needed the night to look after Joel. He was going far, he explained, and Yuriam would be coming with him. A crowd of students milled nervously around a shimmering purple portal. The anti-demonic human battle simulation was about to begin. A palpable tension filled the air as the students prepared to be thrown into the virtual dungeon. This was a grueling 3-day, 2-night survival combat exercise. Students were grouped into teams of 3, guided by their chaperones, who would act as operators. From a control room overlooking the area, GD donned his headset. Down on the floor, Yuriam crouched unimpressed. She scoffed at the trembling students, doubting any of them had seen real combat. GD's voice crackled in her earpiece, warning her not to be so relaxed. He reminded her that this was a 3-person team mission, not a solo raid. She retorted that she would only team up with someone she liked. As if on cue, a nervous boy and a quiet girl approached, asking to join her team. Before they could finish, Yuriam told them to get lost, but GD calmly asked for their names. The boy introduced himself as Hisaki Sojiro, and the girl as Kim Jian. They bowed, promising not to hinder her. Yuriam, however, was still fuming. GD overrode her, accepting them into the team, much to her outrage. When he told her to find her own team if she wasn't happy, she grumbled that it was too much of a pain. She turned to her new teammates and threatened to kill them if they got in her way. Sojiro, surprisingly, thanked her. His gratitude was cut short when a bully smacked him on the back of the head. The bully, Johnny, sneered at him for loitering. Sojiro apologized nervously, and Johnny turned his attention to Jin, grabbing her hair. He dismissed his friend's warning, claiming no one cared about orphans anyway. He roughly pushed Jin's bangs aside, and was surprised when Urium's voice cut through the air, asking what an orphan was. Johnny froze, recognizing the infamous lunatic from the Blue Dragon School. He recalled his elder's warnings to stay away from her. He stammered an explanation, telling Urium that orphans were students without chaperones, dirt-poor nobodies with no backing. He gave a thumbs up, but his smile was strained. Urium, now understanding, cursed her luck at being teamed up with beggars. Johnny, seeing an opportunity, put his arm around her, questioning why someone so strong would team up with idiots. He offered her a spot on his team, believing he could manipulate her. He thought she had a similar violent streak and would be easy to handle. His thoughts were violently interrupted by Urium's fist connecting with his face. The onlookers gasped in shock. Her new teammates stared wide-eyed. Johnny clutched his bleeding nose, asking if she wanted to die. Urium calmly asked who gave him permission to touch her shoulder, questioning who he was to think they were equals. As he stumbled away with his friends, he swore he would tear her apart if he saw her again. Urium simply seethed in silence, while GD sighed. Professor Quan Jaitai called for attention and began explaining the rules. 50 teams would start at different points in the dungeon. All actions would be converted into points and ranked in real time. Death would result in a 3-hour respawn at a different location. The dungeon was called the Ant Nest. With a final good luck, the simulation began. Urium's team was the first to step into the portal. She looked around, admitting the virtual environment wasn't bad. She was ready to charge in and beat up everything in sight, but Jin stopped her, asking if she even knew where the other teams were. Urium's plan was simple: run around until they found someone. Jin pointed out that they weren't as fast as her and that rushing in could get them ambushed. Urium mocked her for bragging about being weak, then declared that the plan was for them to follow and cover her. Jin insisted they needed to work as a team, but Urium was already losing her patience. Sojiro tried to calm them down. GD's voice cut in, asking if Urium had a target number. He wanted to know which team she wanted to get behind, a phrase that seemed to have a double meaning. Jin argued that finding a target wouldn't be easy, as every team had an operator. Urium dismissed her negativity, declaring her plan was simply to kill everyone in sight. This was the kind of plan that would make Sun Tzu proud. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight. Elsewhere in the cave, Johnny nursed his bloody nose. His teammates chided him for messing with Urium when they had warned him not to. He claimed he was just testing her reaction when his friend questioned if he was serious about replacing one of them. He swore that if he met her again, he would tear her apart. A voice echoed from the darkness, asking if he was sure about that. Urium leaped from above, a feral grin on her face, and challenged him to try. A single kick sent his health points plummeting. She landed amidst his team, a blur of motion. Their operator yelled in panic, ordering his team to prepare for battle. They raised their weapons, but Urium was already on the move. This wasn't a battle, she thought with a savage smile. It was a one-sided hunt.